Hey there, good afternoon everybody, and welcome here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here today to talk about progressive rock bands. Yes, so in my beginning, well actually they're not really progressive rock bands. I don't know why I said that. In this case they're mostly progressive rock bands, but what it is I did a couple of episodes where I did my bands that I listened to early on and the runs of albums that they had that I enjoyed, and then I did a second one called more early bands that I did that I enjoyed, and their runs as well. So now I'm doing one that's a little bit later. So this occurred around the time of the birth of my daughter in the early part of this century. And some of these bands, of course, I've been listening to since the 80s, but I never really listened to all their albums, so I couldn't really make any kind of a runs for them. But each of them now has a minimum of 3 albums in their run. One of them has only 3, but the rest of them are fairly substantial. So these aren't necessarily albums that did fantastically or made a ton of money, or maybe they're not thought of as being great albums by some people, but by me I think of them as classic albums that I really enjoy and like a lot. So I don't have them in any particular order, so we're just gonna start with the first one, which is a 5-album run by this artist. I could have put the first album in as well, but to be honest, I was never a big fan of that album. Yeah, it's got a couple of good songs on it, but I just, for some reason, never really caught on big with me. The second album was really the first one for me to get into that I liked quite a bit, and it's this album, Scratch, or Gabriel 2 is what I prefer to call it. This is Gabriel 2, or the Scratch album if you prefer. This has a plethora of great tracks on it. Very underrated album. It's continued to move up over the years with me. As went from a 2, it's now going to probably end up being a 1. On the Air, DIY, 2 of my favorite Peter Gabriel songs right away. I love them. Very singable, this album. It's more acoustic sounding and more raw sounding and more kind of dated sounding than the other albums, but definitely has a lot of good stuff on it. With White Shadow, another great tune. Mother Violence, which is a song I've always liked. And they got Indigo and Animal Magic. Those are both great. Exposure's that kind of weird tune on the album, but I do like it a lot. And then Home Sweet Home. The Flotsam and Jetsam in perspective, I'm not as crazy about them. It's got a nice cover to it. Nice back cover to it. I think that's the... looks like he's under a... what do they call it, the subway system. Anyways, fairly young here. It's just only his second album here. Really good. I like this album a lot. I've gotten into it more as years go on too. I just think it's a real classic. I spent a lot of time talking about it too. So the next one up, without a doubt, is his best album, I think. This is Gabriel 3, or some people call it Melt. He's got a picture on the back too. Lots of great tunes on here. I think the difference between these two really is that this one has the top songs are really good, and then it's got some weaker songs and not so much middle stuff as the Gabriel 2 doesn't really have any of those great songs. A couple that are really good, but nothing great. But from top to bottom, it's a bit more solid, I think. This one has the top songs on this album: I Don't Remember, Games Without Frontiers, Biko, No Self-Control. These are all really, I don't remember, I don't know if I said that, really great songs, right? So it starts out with Intruder, with that drum part that Phil Collins plays on this album, and I think he learned something from that because he played again on his own Face Value. What year is this one? 1980, I believe. Is this 1980 or is it the 70s? So let me look. Can't remember, and it's not going to tell you. I don't know why they never tell you anything like that. They give you the reproduced part of it, time period. I'm thinking it's either late 70s. Yeah, I think he kicks off. I think it's either a late 70s or early 80s album. It doesn't clearly say anything about that. It says 2002 on it. I guess that's when it was re-released, right? Anyways, fantastic album. Biko, classic. Very political, this album. It tackles a lot of different topics on here. No One Like Us, which is racism, attack on racism. Games of the Frontiers is definitely his best song, I think. One of the best rock songs ever written. I just absolutely love that song. I think it's about war. And Through the Wire, Family Snapshot, that's the one about the Kennedy assassination. A really decent song too. It's grown on me over years. I don't remember. I'm not sure what that's about. No Self-Control. That absolutely one of my favorite songs by him. So this album is a masterpiece, no doubt about it. So the next one up, Security. Some people call this 4. I just call it Security. Rhythm of the Heat, great tune. Lay Your Hands on Me and Wallflower, all good tunes, but my favorite tunes, San Jacinto, I Have the Touch, Shock the Monkey, Kiss of Life. I like all these songs a lot. Probably over time, I would say San Jacinto is probably my favorite on the album, although Shock the Monkey was and perennial one of my favorite songs. I have this album in German too, which for some reason I bought it in German, and that's the only version I had, and that's what I played. Well, it's such a good album. It's typical people on: Jerry Marotta, Tony Levin, Larry Fast, David Rhodes are all on this album. Great album. The next album up was a big album for me. Had a huge impact on me from I think this is from 84, although it does say 86 on it too. Again, they're not gonna really tell me. Oh, it does say 86, Geffen Records. So anyways, Excellence, Red Rain and Sledgehammer are the big ones on here. Don't Give Up with Kate Bush, another good one. In Your Eyes, I really like this song a lot. Big Time, of course, that's a pulse pounding song. I like that. And so this album is kind of the beginning of that world sound. Maybe a little bit of it on Security, but this definitely is the beginning of that kind of world sound that he likes to do. Great album though. And then you have this one, which is on my Masterpiece collection. If you were watching, you would have seen that this morning. So Peter Gabriel, Come Talk to Me, Love to Love You, Keep It Secret, Kiss the Frog, all fantastic tunes. And then you've got your two big hits in Steam and Digging in the Dirt. But just about everything on here is good. This is a solid album. Another of that world sound that he kind of got into a lot lately, a lot later in his career. Yeah, so this is the 5th album in the run. So we got Gabriel 2, Gabriel 3, Security, So, and Us. Not big on long names, but yeah, great albums, all of them. So that's the first batch of runs for Peter Gabriel. And now we go back, and Peter Gabriel is going to get some more mention here, but this time with a different venue. And of course we're going to talk about Genesis here. I have 9, this is a 8 album run. Probably one of the biggest that you will see. Starts out with this one, which also was on my video this morning. If you want to watch and see my new Masterpiece albums, this one I graduated to Masterpiece. A great album. White Mountain, Looking for Someone, Stagnation, which is that kind of the beginning of that real Genesis sound, and then The Knife, of course, which is a epic tune. This was 1970 a release. Next year they came out with this one, which is even better. A better album. Not much better, but better. Music Box, Return of the Giant Hogweed, which is one of my favorite. Kind of a weird story, but I really love the heaviness of that song. The Fountain of Salmacy is so good. Such a great song. Harlequin, another good song. Yeah, this is bereft with lots of stuff on it, and the album covers the first of 2, I think, or 3 by this artist. This one is for sure. Nursery Crime and Foxtrot, another album like that. This one's the one where he got that red dress from for his being alive. Watchers of the Sky, one of the great classic Genesis songs, one of the great classic prog rock songs. Timetable, I like that a lot. Utility, Can Utility and the Coastliner is one of my favorites. A little bit poppy, but it's still a great song. And then the little acoustic bit that leads into Supper's Ready, which is one of the epic, classic, great rock songs of all time. Yeah, Foxtrot. The next album in the run, Selling England by the Pound. Kind of a little bit weird on the artwork here, but I do like this album a lot. My favorite tune, I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe and Cinema Show. Those, I like those two a lot. But I do like Battle of Epping Forest, First of Fifth, of course. How could you not like that? Dancing in the Moonlit Night, another great tune. This album is very top heavy. The only song on this I don't really care much for is More Fool Me. I don't hate it, but I just don't care for it. So then we go to the one-liner, the one that's kind of off the beaten path. They all kind of follow a flow, and then this one's kind of outside of that flow, and we're talking about The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Sorry, I drew a blank. Great album. Still has In the Cages on here as well. You've got Carpet Crawlers, great tune. I like this one, The Light Dies Down on Broadway. Where is it? Here comes the Supernatural Alchemist. I can never pronounce it, but I like that a lot too. There's some really good stuff on here. Maybe a little too much stuff, but still a great album, double album. So next up, number 6. My favorite Genesis album, although it's under siege now by several other albums that are making their way to the top. And it's because it's just, I've had this album since the early 80s. It was one of my first. I bought 2 Genesis albums within a couple of weeks of each other, and then I never bought anything else. I'm not really sure what took me so long. Dance on a Volcano and Tangled, great tunes. Squonk, Madman Moon, Robbery, Assault and Battery, Ripples. The whole album is to me a great album. Entangled's probably my favorite now, but at one time Ripples was the song, or in the very beginning it was Squonk. I always like the kind of whimsical styles, and the album cover is great too. It has a little bit of every song on here, kind of a little bit like Trespass that way. Then you come to this one, which is darker and foreboding in some ways. Depressing maybe, I don't know, but I love the 11th Earl of Mar. It's probably my favorite track on here. But Blood on the Rooftops, great tune from Steve Hackett. Afterglow's good. All in a Mouse's Night probably was my favorite tune on here at one time, and One for the Vine, of course. You can't go wrong with that song. And the last one in the run, and then there were 3. This one's a little bit more operatic. No, I wouldn't say opera. Symphonic sounding is the word. A little bit more symphonic sounded. Not as great. There's not the guitar. The guitar work on here, of course, isn't that great. But keyboards are pretty solid. The songs are good. It's not as strong an album as the predecessors, but it's still a good album. I like Down and Out and Undertow. Deep in the Motherlode's probably my favorite track on the album. Scenes from a Night's Dream, I've always liked that. It's one of my favorites to sing as well. And Follow You, Follow Me, I like that. I know it's a bit poppy, but it's still really good. So there you have it, Genesis. And we will redo them. So you got, turn them upside down, it's easier. Trespass, Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, Selling England by the Pound, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Trick of the Tail, Wind in the Wuthering, and ends off with And Then There Were Three. So that's the second run of albums. Now the third one, another prog band, but not as proggy at this point in time. Moving into prog quite a bit though. And we got this kind of upside down here. So we'll start out with the first one. This is from Jethro Tull, Stand Up. This album is still relatively new to me, but I've had it about a year. I really like this album a lot. It has a lot of great sounds to it. Beret's on this as well. Fat Man is one of my favorite of their songs. A New Day, Yesterday, that's a great tune. We Used to Know, like there's lots of really classic Tull on this. This is a great album. Next up, Benefit. Only this one I started listening to after that one. I do like it. It's a good album. It hasn't grown on me as much yet because it's still fairly new to me. I maybe listened to this maybe 30 times now, so it's gotten its fair bit of listening. There's just some really great sounds on this album as they move towards that prog sound. The next album, of course, is probably their legendary album, Aqualung. So many great tracks here: Cross-Eyed Mary, Aqualung itself, Mother Goose. You've got My God, Wind Up, of course, Locomotive Breath. All these are great tunes. This album is a little bit murky though. Its production's not as good on this album, but the songs are fantastic. The next one up in the run is considered to be their best prog album, Thick as a Brick. Only got the one track, but they're all so good. It's such a good track. This is a well thought out album. Kind of quirky though, try to pass this little kid off as having written this album, but fantastic album. Can't pass on this at all. It's a great album. The next album up, he barely makes this. I almost didn't put it on, but it's got Bungle in the Jungle and Skating Away on the Thin Ice of Day, which are two of my favorite Jethro Tull songs. I like them. War Child, Queen of the Country, really good tracks as well. Yeah, this just makes it, just because this top half is really strong, and some of the other stuff isn't too bad as well. I like the album cover; it's kind of different. War Child. So, reiterating the Jethro Tull run. So it starts with Stand Up. Next is Benefit. Then Aqualung, then Thick as a Brick, and then War Child. I wasn't a huge fan of Passion Play, otherwise the run would have gone on a little longer. The next run comes from a band that I like quite a bit. I do have some of their other albums now. I'm beginning to listen to some of the stuff I never got into, and this run could change. But for today, we're going to start with Crime of the Century by Supertramp. I've talked about this album a lot over the last little while, since it's the forward champion right now. School and Bloody Well Right, big hits. Hide in Your Shell, fantastic. Asylum, I don't mind that. Dreamer, kind of the different song on the album. Rudy wasn't one of my favorites, but it's grown on me over time. If Everyone Was Listening, and then of course Crime of the Century, which is masterpiece, masterful song. So the second album in this run is Crisis, What Crisis. I love this album cover. Guy sitting, sunning himself like he's on a beach, and everything around him is completely and utterly destroyed. Yeah, it's just funny. I like Easy Does It, Sister Moonshine, one of my favorite tunes by them. Ain't Nobody But Me, another good tune. Soapbox Opera, sorry. Another Man's Woman, that's a good one. Lady, Poor Boy, Just a Normal Day, In the Meaning, and Two of Us. Yeah, this is a pretty good album all the way from top to bottom. Doesn't have that great kind of big hit or anything like that, but a solid album. Next up, Even in the Quietest Moments. To me, it's a very underrated album. Eventually it's going to be masterpiece, no doubt about it. Give a Little Bit, well-known, big hit on the radio. Even in the Quietest Moment, that's the song that always makes me cry, so that's part of the reason why I don't listen to it too much. Baba G, another great song, and Fool's Overture. I love all of those songs so much, and then the other stuff isn't bad either. And the album cover's nice too, even though it's kind of different on the back. It's broken up. There you go. And then the last one, of course, Supertramp's Breakfast in America. One of the biggest commercial albums of all time. You know, he had Logical Song, Goodbye Stranger, Breakfast in America, and Take the Long Way Home. All hits, all radio hits. Child of Vision, that's probably the most proggy song on the album, but it's really good as well. Lord Is It Mine, it's probably my favorite. And Oh Darling, it's a good tune as well. So this is a great album. So there you have it, Supertramp. So we'll go back and reiterate them again. So you got Crime of the Century, starts it out, followed by Crisis, What Crisis, then Even in the Quietest Moment, and then of course Breakfast in America. Now the last run is the shortest of the three. I had to change this because I had somebody else in there and I forgot I had already done them, so I had to rechange it. But these three, there's only three in the run. Some people would have put the one at the top in the run as well, maybe the one before it, but I didn't. I think I love this album. This is a great album. Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon starts the run off, and just like this reads as the greatest hits almost. Speak to Me, Breathe, On the Run, Time, The Great Gig in the Sky, Money, Us and Them, Any Colors Like You, Brain Damage, Eclipse. No bad stuff on this album. Nothing but great stuff. Next up, this one's almost as good. Almost as good. Shine On You Crazy Diamond, parts 1 and 2. That sandwich the rest of the album. Welcome to the Machine, which is one of my favorite Floyd songs. Having a Cigar, great. Wish You Were Here, title track. Great album. And then it ends off with my favorite Floyd album, Animals. I love this cover, even the original cover. It's just so good. Pigs on the Wing 1, and Pigs on the Wing 2, which sandwich the rest of them. Dogs, Pigs, and Sheep. The Pigs is 3 different ones. Yeah, so this is just such a good album. It's pretty heavy too. Not just proggy as hell, but heavy. It's almost like a progressive heavy metal album in some ways. It's such a great album. So there you have. Oh, I didn't do them. So we reiterate them. So we start Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals. And I know some of you would have included the next one, but I am not a fan of that album, and I'm not putting it in my list. So there you go. So, you know, if you like this video, please like below and subscribe on the side. What albums do you like? Which of these albums would you change? Any of this? You know, what do you have to say about any of this? So make your comments below, hit the like button, and hit the subscription button. And we'll be back again next Wednesday with another Wednesday Night Favorites. So take care.